Thank you, Minister. Can I move on and invite Mr. Bojan Markovic from the EBRD to address us?
Thank you very much, Lazo. Ja ću zbog ovih naših međunarodnih gostiju na engleskom, ali će mi vrlo drago da odgovaram na pitanja na našem jeziku. It's my great privilege to speak at the Economist conference. Congratulations to the Economist team for putting yet another impressive event. In this introductory note, I'd like to cover three topics: our short-term growth expectations for Southeast Europe and Montenegro, the key medium-term challenges as we see them for the region in Montenegro, and of course, key areas of future focus of EBRD's investment and policy work here in the country. So let me start with just a bit of a view of what's happening with the GDP. I mean, we heard much more, so I won't go into the details. After growing 2.2% in 2015, 6 Western Balkans countries are expected to grow on average 2.7% in 2016 and then around 3% in 2017. So the short-term growth prospects in the regions have improved. And that's the case not only for Western Balkans, that's the case for Southeast Europe as well, with Greece for the first time expected to move the growth into the positive territory in 2017. Growth in the region is supported by several factors. And that's a combination of global things and regional things, as ever. The global financial markets remain sanguine, and the consumer confidence remains high. And that weighs down on any investor risk, and that means that the cost of funding in emerging markets, and in our region as well, is still relatively low. Now, for us in particular, the fact that the Eurozone continues to recover and that the quantitative easing continues in the European monetary system means also that there is this sort of additional stimulus that spills over to some of our countries. And for countries which benefit from tourism, such as Montenegro, Croatia, and Greece, they continue to benefit from tourists reorienting away from Turkey and some countries in Southeast Mediterranean due to ongoing security concerns there. So there is a bit of a stimulus coming, from that area as well. But there are some big challenges as well. Again, these challenges are geopolitical uncertainties. For our region in particular, Brexit, elections in the EU countries, we have covered some of them in the morning. That is weighing down on investors' confidence and potentially cost of funding in the region. But also the renewed political tensions in some of the countries in the region may weigh down on growth, and we are already seeing some of the negative growth trends in Macedonia as a consequence of the political uncertainties. Now in Montenegro, GDP growth indeed moderated from 3.4% in 2015 to 2.5% in 2016, but we expect that to edge up to around 3% in 2017 and 3.3% in 2018, so more or less in line with Economist projections. One of the major drivers of growth in Montenegro in the future is expected to be the investment in highway Bar-Boljara indeed. But nevertheless, due to a high import content of this investment during the construction stage, we expect that the major positive impact of it on GDP will indeed not come in the short term, but rather after the construction stage is finished, so in the long term, as the highway becomes operational. In the short term, we expect that the major boost will come from the electricity output with newly commissioned Krnovo wind power plant, and also from the tourism sector, as I mentioned, due to ongoing security issues in Turkey and other countries, we do see some of reorientation of tourists towards this region, Montenegro, Greece, Croatia. The major challenge, of course, remains the previously mentioned continuing rise in public debt, which is expected to exceed 80% of GDP by 2018. Let me now turn to key medium-term challenges as we see them. The first one, the regional challenge, is still very high level of NPLs in the region. And let me be clear, non-performing loans are a drag on growth, even when they are fully provisioned, because first, they are wasting managerial times of corporate managers and bank managers, and second, because they are rendering performing loans more expensive. Now, the good news, and I'm very happy to report, is that recently, non-performing loans throughout the regions are falling, and indeed, Governor of the Central Bank has mentioned that that's the case in Montenegro as well. This is partly due to a so-called MPL initiative efforts, which many of the international financial institutions, together with the local authorities, have enforced in order to make action plans for a sustainable NPL resolution and in order to attract NPL private investors into the region. But there's much more to be done, and in many of the countries of the region, that's not the case with Montenegro, but some others, such as Bulgaria or Serbia, NPLs remain above 10% and sometimes even above 20%. The second big challenge, medium-term challenge, is a continuing deleveraging of the Eurozone-based banks in the region. This deleveraging, for those of you who may follow, is actually stunning. Since the time of the crisis, Eurozone-based banks have reduced their exposure to the region by around 30%. The good news is that that deleveraging was orderly deleveraging. It came gradually, and it gave some time for the domestic deposits to rise and replace the foreign funding that we saw. But of course, the problems remain because usually domestic deposits are more shorter term than foreign funding. So we are having some of the challenges in the banking sector in gathering longer term financial sources and then therefore funding longer term investment projects in the region. And let me now turn to some of the other challenges that may be specific to Montenegro, and let me put it through the prism of EBRD's focus on the investments in the region over the next 4 years period. As of January 2017, EBRD's portfolio in Montenegro is around 350 million euros, with more than 200 million euros of operating assets and around 36 projects ranging from energy and financial sector to agribusiness, manufacturing, and infrastructure. We indeed intend to continue to invest directly and to attract other foreign investors to Montenegro. And in particular, we plan to do that in several key areas. The first, we plan to focus on enhancing competitiveness of the private sector, and in particular in developing agribusiness value chains and backward linkages in the tourism sector. Now, the aim of this focus will be to develop a more resilient, innovative private sector that will help accelerate the country's convergence to the EU peers in terms of productivity. Within this, we would also like to focus on the access to finance for some of the underserved sectors, such as small and medium enterprises, or indeed for the sectors which are run by female entrepreneurs through our Women in Business programs. And of course, we intend to keep providing a strong support to the NPL resolution. As the government mentioned, we see some improvements, but NPLs are still high, almost 10%. The second key area of our investment focus will be on improving connectivity and regional integration, both in terms, as Minister mentioned, on building cross-border transports, roads, but also in terms of building up energy links with other countries to increase energy resilience of Montenegro. And finally, as Montenegro marks 25 years of its proclamation as an ecological state, EBRD will focus its support on the shift to a greener and more sustainable economy through investments in industrial waste disposal, water resource management, sustainable energy, and sustainable tourism. All of this should help the country enter the EU and converge to the EU counterparts at a faster pace. Thank you, and this should be the introductory part, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bojan, very much.